right. Hello, and welcome to the University Bookstore. I'm Renee Kirkpatrick, our children's book buyer, and I'm so excited to present Adam Rex, the author of many very cool picture books for children, and a new book for young adults called A Little Light Waking, which I just finished and can't wait to share with you. It is an absolutely amazing read. Today, Adam will be in conversation with another favorite author of ours, Margaret Owen. There should be time for questions at the end, and you can get your book signed then. So, with no further ado, Adam.
Thank you.
Okay, so for folks who missed this earlier, we're going to start with Adam doing a reading, do some conversation questions, and then we will open the floor up for questions to you. So Adam, if you'd like to take it away.
So previously I did this reading without actually telling you what the book was about first, and I realized there's no reason to be coy about it. The jacket flap tells you what the book is about. So this is a funny adventure romance about a young woman who discovers that her reality is not real, that her life is but a dream, and she discovers this just as the dream starts getting good. I'm jumping into the middle of chapter 1, where she has not actually figured this out yet. She has just woken up and gotten ready for the day, and now she's out on a run. And she's about to have a startling revelation. She turns into the town square to circle the courthouse a few times, and that's when it hits her. Oh my gosh, she huffs, grinding to a stop. Oh no! There are a couple of guys playing frisbee nearby, the kind who are all muscly arms and haircuts. What? One of them asks her, stepping close. What is it? My final, says Zelda as she glances up at the courthouse clock. My geography final. It starts in 5 minutes. Dude, that sucks, calls the other frisbee guy. Well, at least you're already dressed for running. Zelda smiles wanly and raises a hand as she sprints off in a new direction. Good luck, Zelda, say the frisbee bros in unison. Zelda leaps over a little red fire hydrant and veers around the cafe. The flower cart woman calls, Zelda, here, and hands her a daisy as she passes. Go get him, Zelda, cheers the tattoo guy with his baby. There's a funny tangle of leashes and legs as Zelda tries to get past that one old man with his 3 tiny dogs. It's just the kind of lively moment you'd expect if Zelda's life were a movie, and these the opening credits. A little snapshot of people in place. Finally, Zelda recovers and dashes past the boutique and bookstore and bakery. Runs under the jewelry store clock on the following block. 4 minutes, she huffs. Hey, kid! There's a girl with a bicycle. A beautiful blue bicycle with a banana seat and a backrest. Kid, Zelda breathes. Can I borrow your bike? The girl's freckles are a constellation. Her gap-toothed smile is as crooked as an old sidewalk. Sure, Zelda, she answers and hands over the handlebars. Just like that. Zelda mounts the bike at a run, leaping onto the seat and settling into a coast with one breathless sweep of her leg. Didn't know I could do that, she whispers absently. Atta girl, shouts a meter maid. Her feet touch the pedals. In that moment, her ears pop. Like something has changed in the air. A sudden shift in pressure. Or maybe not, no one else seems to notice it. 3 minutes. Zelda pumps her legs and settles into a groove. She's going to make her test in time. This bicycle has a bell. She rings it. Its tone is perfect and clear, like a drop of blue water. Then she takes a turn a little wide, and there's an oncoming car, and her heart sinks. Time slows down. Does time really slow down? No, it couldn't. Time doesn't do that. Still, Zelda has enough time to feel every bump in the road, hear the scream of tires, see the startled face of the driver that's about to hit her. It's that woman who's always selling Girl Scout cookies outside the Save Mart. Zelda sees her mouth a word she probably doesn't use in front of the Girl Scouts. Then someone somewhere shouts, "Look out!" and Zelda brakes. The car brakes, their brakes catch, and they grind like glaciers toward each other in dilated time. Patient, but inevitable. Actually, not so inevitable. They both stop, hardly more than a meter apart. The woman behind the wheel finishes the word she'd been saying, the crisp T of it fogging a little spot on her windshield. Then, time speeds up again as a third person, some boy, lurches across the road between them, trips over a curb, does a header over a railing, and disappears behind some bushes. It seems like a good moment for someone to say, ta-da! Nobody does. Zelda's chest thumps and her head goes light. She's standing in the middle of the street. The car stands in the middle of the street, facing her. The driver's side window opens and the woman sticks her head out. Sorry, Zelda, she shouts. No, says Zelda, don't apologize. It was me, I'm sorry. She can't remember the woman's name. You okay? Yeah, you? The driver's okay. Zelda jerks her head at the flowery hedge on the side of the road. Who was that guy? She asks. I think he was trying to save you, shouts the Girl Scout woman. Zelda squints at the bushes. He missed. She wheels her bike toward those bushes and waves to the driver as she leaves. She doesn't have time for this. She has, in fact, 2 minutes. Hello? She calls to the guy. Was that you who shouted, look out? It was just a suggestion, says a voice on the other side of the flowers. Are you hurt? I have to go. You go on ahead then, says the flower boy, having a lie down. All tuckered out from the big rescue attempt, says Zelda, trying to get a look at him. The branches are too thick to see. Rescue? Nah, I was just rushing to get a good spot in the hedge before it filled up. Zelda bumps the bike up onto the curb and leans across the fence, cranes her neck over the hedge into someone's front yard, a little garden and a crabapple tree. Okay, she says, thank you for... That's when she sees him. She looks away quickly, as if she'd happened upon something scandalous, but it's nothing of the sort, just a boy, a cute boy, her age, his long body draped over the wet grass. She's afraid to look at him, but she also really, really wants to look at him again. It probably seemed weird to him anyway, her looking away like that. So she quiets herself, collects her features, and leans once again into the yard. Sorry, she tells him, but there's no one there. Zelda straightens. She looks all around. There's no one there. He's gone. And that is just a bit of chapter 1.
Nice. So much fun. So, first, of course, is tell us a little bit about your work and yourself and this book. And we've gotten a little bit of the book, so let's go to your work and yourself.
So I'm an author and illustrator. I started out doing illustrations for things like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, all while trying to get into the kids book industry, which I decided I wanted to be a part of ever since working after school at a Walden Books. Everybody remember Walden Books? When I was a teenager.
No.
It was like my high school job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel personally responsible for them going out of business, but I probably didn't help. Because what I tended to do while I was working is hide in the kids' book section and look at the picture books instead of shelving or whatever it was I was supposed to be doing. So, you know, after a number of years of hustling, I finally managed to start making kids' books. And I do a lot of picture books. I write and illustrate a lot of picture books. I've written and illustrated some middle grade as well. This is actually my second YA. I guess I've let that cat out of the bag. I'm not sure that my first YA was any good, so I'm afraid to read it and find out.
That's fair.
So it was so long ago that everybody keeps assuming this is my debut.
Oh, no.
But that's me. I live in Tucson, Arizona with my physicist wife and my non-physicist son and a dog, and that's all that there is to know about me.
TBD on the physicist's son. We'll see.
Yeah, he's still working it out. He's into airplanes right now. We'll see.
I mean, could combine both and be an airplane designer.
Yeah,
And where you go.
He like fell in love with airplanes because of a very cool cousin he met recently who's training to be a commercial pilot. So every time I've tried to think, oh, he's really into the human body right now. Maybe he'll be a doctor. It's just like it goes away 5 months later, and
He wants to be an airplane now.
now he wants to be an airplane.
Excellent. I mean, who amongst us does not really? Well, that is fun. What made you want to go from kids' books, or from like children's like picture books to YA?
I mean, it isn't really like a conscious decision so much as I got an idea that I wanted to keep thinking about, and it wasn't a picture book.
That's it. Yeah.
And so honestly, I'm sort of surprised. I'm not singular in this sense that there are people like Shannon Hale who do picture books in middle grade and YA, Peter Brown and there are other people, but there are an awful lot of people who just make picture books their whole lives or just do YA. And I always think to myself, does that YA author just never get an idea for a great picture book? Maybe she does, and she just doesn't do anything with it. But I tend to follow the idea where it seems to lead. And this basic premise of like discovering that you're in a dream could have been like a middle grade novel as well. But then I would have had to ignore what I think is a very rich part of dream life, which is romance. So, I wanted to make it YA for that reason.
Nice. I got some questions about that later on. Sure. So what was the inspiration for this? Like, where did this book come from?
Well, I don't sleep very well, even when I'm not traveling. So I attribute that to why I feel like I remember a lot more of my dreams than other people I talk to.
Yeah, I don't remember any of my dreams.
You don't?
Almost never.
My long-suffering wife has to listen to like a catalog of all the things that happened to me the previous night when I wake up, because I remember little snippets of them. Sometimes I wake up with whole songs that I apparently composed. I'm not good ones, but still, I will grab my son's face and sing it at him so that he will know it too before it disappears from both of our memories.
But then it's never going to disappear if he likes it. That's the problem.
Yeah, we did. There was one I sang to him that we just sort of sung as a family for a couple of weeks afterwards, but I don't even remember that one anymore. I'm getting off track. So I remember a lot of my dreams, and it was after a flying dream. I don't have a lot of flying dreams, but I have them from time to time. They always go the same way. I remember I can fly. It seems to me, and this comes up a lot in this book, that I feel like that's the trick that my brain does to reconcile things. I don't know about everybody else, but when I'm having a dream and my beloved grandma is there, I have to suddenly figure out why it was that I thought she was dead. And so I will think to myself, that's weird that I forgot that she was alive, is what I will think in the dream, And so I feel like, there's no magic in my dreams. Things don't appear. I just remember that I was holding something that I wasn't holding a second ago.
Like a sword.
Like a sword, which pops up in the book. But so when I fly, I always remember I can fly, and I'm amazed that I forgot that. And then I always have the same thought during the dream, which is, this is incredible. I have dreamt of flying so many times that now it's really happening. I always get that close to figuring it all out, but I never do. And a morning after one of those dreams, I started idly wondering about the other people in my dream. There's always like background characters. And I'm not being cute. I know that they don't have any interior lives, but I still found myself wondering, what do they think when they see me flying? Does that cause them to question everything and wonder?
And what happens next?
I feel like if I were walking through my neighborhood and I saw somebody fly by, rather than thinking, oh, comic books are real or something, I would probably think, oh, maybe I'm not awake.
Right.
I really thought I was awake, but the only way I can explain that is maybe I'm not awake. So that's kind of where it came from. So I was teasing that out, just like, what would it be like if you thought you were living your life and then you started getting some unignorable proof that maybe you weren't actually
in reality. Yeah.
And around that time, I've been thinking about this book a long time. In 2013, a movie came out based on my first novel. It's called Home. It was by DreamWorks. It that stars Steve Martin and Rihanna.
Yeah,
Because of it, I got to stand near Rihanna at a party one time.
excellent. So the Rihanna glow.
Yeah, they offered to introduce me to her, and I thought that's not going to go well, so I just contented myself with standing next to her. And so it turns out that when you have something, if you're lucky enough to have something adapted like that, then for some 6-month span of time afterwards, everyone in Hollywood is willing to talk to you on the phone to see if you have any other ideas. And so I took this very tiny kernel of a dream idea and spun it out into something that I could pitch to DreamWorks. And they actually bought it and they started working on it, and then they abruptly stopped working on it, but I kept working on it. So many, many years later, it just kept getting longer and longer until now it's the almost 400-page behemoth that it turned into.
That's actually I'm going to skip to one of my questions with that because it ties really neatly.
Yeah.
I remember reading in the acknowledgments that it started originally as like a 3,000 word short story, and then it became this. And I wanted to ask about the process of that. And you've got sort of the unique challenge of both expanding this from a short story into a full-length novel, and doing it with illustrations, which I'm sure you didn't do like the full illustration for everything because you had to be editing and shuffling around stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really draw much of anything until fairly late in the process because I wasn't sure if anybody was going to let me illustrate it at all. YA books are really changing, but I think this is still kind of a weird YA book that it has illustrations in it. When I started in this business, you knew something was a YA book because the cover was a blurry photo of a girl from the neck down holding a daisy or an apple or something.
Pretty much, yeah.
And there was
Sometimes floating in water.
maybe floating in water, like an Ophelia sort of thing. There was never illustrations on YA novels, 20 years ago, because that's how you knew it was YA and you didn't mistake it for middle grade. And right now the zeitgeist is every YA novel has got an illustrated cover, which is good for illustrators.
Right.
But even still, and even with the growing influence of graphic novels, I still didn't know if anybody was going to let me do this. So I didn't really draw much of anything until I, eventually kind of, meekly pitched to my publisher, what would you think about this having illustrations in it? Because I always wanted it to, especially when it was a much shorter thing that I felt was just really more like an adult fable or a young adult fable.
Yeah.
So it was written more in that way with a lot less granularity. It was written more like a Hansel and Gretel story or something. And so, yeah, it's just years and years then of just adding more and more. And every time I would pull it out in between, I'd have a couple of weeks where I was waiting for an editor to get back to me with some feedback on something I was actually supposed to be working on. So I would pull it out again and write some more, and it just kept, ballooning into what it is now.
Nice. Yeah, I had a similar thing when I wanted to do illustrations for Little Faves, and my editor, I didn't ask her so much as I basically said, look, I think this would be really great if I did this. And, they always do the thing, which they have to, which is sometimes you have authors who are overestimating their own capabilities when it comes to illustrative competence.
Okay, so you were talking about doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so it was.
Now I want to see some of your illustration work. I didn't realize you did that.
Yeah. I'll show you later, but I basically emailed her and I said, look, there's these 7 interstitials and they're like told like fairy tales, and I want to do a sort of engraving style illustration to go with each one of those. And she was like, yeah, sure, Molly, okay, cool. And then I sent them to her and she's like, okay, they're going in the book, that's great, done. And so it's like you kind of have to do that, at least with Macmillan, where you just say like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and 9 times out of 10 they'll just be like, oh, okay, cool, and then just keep on rolling.
And we have such a weird attitude, like culturally, towards illustration in books. I mean, everybody accepts that visual art is appropriate for adults. It's not,
Right.
and we think that prose is also appropriate for adults, but the combination of the two is just for children and half-wits.
Unless you do something like Persepolis, which is a beautiful book.
Yeah,
But like it's
but that was the problem that graphic novels and comics had for the longest time too. It was just this idea that like, well, yeah, we like written stories and we like art, but no, if you put them together,
They're for children.
they're for children,
Right.
and they're presumably all superhero stories. And like, how could you do anything else? And it's this bizarre attitude we have towards that juxtaposition that, and so even now, when I feel like a lot of people have really embraced comics at all ages, librarians are pushing graphic novels to 10-year-olds and 18-year-olds and everything in between, but still something like this kind of stands out as a strange, maybe it will signal that it's actually kind of for younger YA, because I don't think it's not like a 16 plus kind of a book that, the publisher actually tags it as 12 to 18. And I was really happy to see that 12, because so much of YA is really more like 14 to 18 or whatever.
That was technically marked 14 to 18. And yet, like, I feel like I read worse when I was a kid, but that's just me. There's a couple of bombs, but
Yeah, there are none in mine, although my very first Amazon review, and I know I should not read them.
That's a bad placement.
My very first Amazon review was someone who rated the book for like sexuality and violence, and also counted all of the swears. And she got 32 of them. I was like, how did you get 32?
Where'd you find those?
I know, so I immediately went to the PDF and I'm like, command effing everything. Like, okay, I know there are no F words, there are no S words, there are neither one of the C words. There's like
the word swear.
There's like 4 damns and 3 hells, and I was baffled. And
scandalous.
And I told my wife this, and she said, "Did you take the Lord's name in vain?"
There you go.
And, oh yeah, there's a lot of just like casual, like oh my gods in them. So, which is fine. Like, I mean, and you're entitled to be offended at whatever you're offended at, but it just shows how different an attitude we can all have about the same books. Where somebody is going to say, "Well, this is really a book for college age kids," and somebody else is going to say, "No, my 11-year-old read this. It was fine."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
YA, folks. It's
YA.
great. It's definitely, it's a fun, challenging genre because it's, for kids of all ages. Well, not all, but it's for teens, but everybody has a different idea about what is for teens, right? So we're going to talk about the book a little bit more, like specifically what's in it. So A Little White Waking is set in a dream.
Yeah.
What appealed to you about setting it in a dreamscape, like specifically? And like what were some of the challenges that?
Well, the appeal and the challenges ended up being the same thing, I think. Mm-hmm. And that you can't really write a prose novel that really feels like a dream, because I think a lot about my dreams, and I think that a lot of the narrative that I believe the dreams have are actually something that I just sort of ascribe onto it after I wake up. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of dreams are just, a pastiche of just unconnected. Right. You're suddenly here, and there's your high school gym teacher, mm-hmm. and then the moon is in your backyard, and there's a cowboy.
As one does. Yeah.
And so I couldn't really write a story that was really like a dream, but nonetheless, it was appealing, the idea of being able to write something where just about anything could happen at any time if I wanted it to, and there was always a built-in explanation for why.
Right.
So if suddenly there was a bunch of baby presidents walking around, and I don't have to tell you why there's baby presidents, you already know why there's baby presidents. And there are, in fact, baby presidents.
There are many baby presidents.
Yeah. But so that was both the challenge and the appeal, because I also knew that, I'm gonna go over the line with some people, and they're gonna think, "Oh, this book was too weird," and they're gonna complain about how weird it was, and for other people, that's gonna be the appeal of it. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, I think that, that's a thing that is also, I think, important for writers to balance, is the understanding that the work is not going to be like, no work is for everyone, and some people are going to dislike it because of the things that other people love, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, and I really didn't want to write the sort of dream story that I feel like dreams are used in fiction frequently as just basically like a revelation machine. Mm-hmm. At a certain point in the plot. Mm-hmm. The character just falls asleep, has a nakedly obvious set of symbols happen
Mhm.
during a dream, and then they wake up understanding everything that they're supposed to do, or they know why their friends are acting the way they're acting. And I hate that kind of thing. That's not how dreams work. So I didn't want to write that kind of thing. I wanted to write something that you would come away thinking that was really dreamlike, even though I might be shaking my head behind you saying, no, it really wasn't, but I'm glad you think so.
Mhm. So, let's see. Okay, so this is a fun one. So I found, definitely I can see some influences of being an artist in how I approach certain things. How do you feel like it's informed your work in prose?
That's a really good question. And sometimes I wonder if it's a hindrance. We're never going to know the inside of anybody else's mind. I don't know if when I imagine the things that I'm writing, if my imagination is any more rich than anybody else's. I know it's more rich than some people because there are literally some people who don't have visual imagination at all. And I've met some of them, I've talked to them about it. And, when you tell them to, remember their worst birthday ever, they don't get any visuals in their head at all. And if you're on social media at all, like you'll notice every 6 months or so, the apple, there'll be something that'll go around that say, hey, when you think of an apple, what do you see? And they'll have all these different, like, is it a photographic apple? Is it more of a symbol? There'll always be like a black and white one for some reason. And then there will always be people under it that say, what do you mean? What do I see? And there will be a lot of them, like people who just, when they think of an apple, I don't know what they think of. They have some sort of synapse that fires that tells them what an apple is in their mind, but
it doesn't make a mental picture.
Yeah. And so I know my visual imagination is better than those people, but otherwise, I wonder sometimes when I'm writing if I'm getting a clear enough idea of what I'm writing that I don't realize what I need to explain. Does that make sense?
Oh, 1000%.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's why you need editors. That's why you need a trusted reader. You need somebody to read this thing for you and say, that doesn't make any sense. I don't.
Right.
You did not explain anywhere near enough to place me in that scene or make that action make sense or whatever. So I don't know. Otherwise, people are always asking me, what comes first, the pictures or the writing? And it's never the pictures, and I don't know why. But I have only ever once written a story because I drew something first. It was years and years ago. It's a book that's out of print now, one of my picture books. I was just doodling, and I drew a picture of a robot stuck in a tree. And so I started trying to figure out what that was about.
Right.
And I kept filling the tree with more animals in the story, and then eventually I realized the only thing that wasn't working in the story was the robot.
Oh no!
So the robot came back out of the story, and
at least he got out of the tree.
Yeah, it turned into a totally different thing. But otherwise, even when I'm writing picture books, I don't tend to start drawing until I feel like I have the words kind of locked down to some degree. What about you?
I find so I wind up doing some brainstorming, or like if I have a scene where I know, like I've got the picture in my mind's eye, but I also know I'm not really fleshing it out enough. I'll do like a quick really gestural painting of it, or I'll do like some concept art for, like this is what I want the palace to look like. This is what I want this to look like, or this is what I want this temple to look like. So it just makes it. I find that like when I'm doing those, my mind will fill in details that I don't even think about while I'm writing. But the flip side is that whenever I'm just describing something, I will give you a crystal clear, perfect like visual image, and then I completely forget every other sensory detail.
Oh.
It's like you're watching a movie, but it's like, oh no, this actually, we're going to talk about how it actually smells like smoke here, or and you can hear your footsteps and you can feel it under, the stone under your feet.
No, I have the same thing, honestly.
Yeah.
I often have to remind myself to throw another sense in there.
Right.
And I really admire when I see other people do that in a very like economical, elegant way.
How do they do it?
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily come all that naturally
Right.
to me either.
Yeah, it's like you're thinking of a picture, you know. It's almost like a cinematic thing rather than like an experiential thing, if that's a word.
Yeah.
I mean, it is now. If it isn't,
I gotta say though, like at my last stop, somebody like thanked me for describing one character, and they were smelling like a book of carpet samples. So
very specific. Yeah.
So I was pleased that somebody noticed that I made a little effort on that one.
Right. That's a good one. Yeah. Do you find yourself like when you are developing characters, do you find yourself like drawing them as part of like the development process of figuring them out, or do you let them that be sort of like a word area only?
I don't tend to draw them, but I often tend to just sort of assign them to somebody I used to know or something. I'm embarrassed to say that Zelda, my main character in this book, started out in my head as this one girl back in high school. She was like the one that got away. So like that kind of cemented her in my mind and also gave me kind of some automatic affection for her as well. And then over time, like she changed a little bit, and what I ended up drawing, on the cover and on the interior here no longer looks like Debbie from high school, because like, what if Debbie sees this book someday? That would be weird. But otherwise, it's kind of funny. I don't actually show the characters all that much. They're often turned away from you, or their faces are hidden.
Yeah.
Because that seems more dreamlike to me.
Oh yeah, like it never fills in the details.
But then there's the part where the two main characters finally meet face to face, and I really went over the top, just like giving you a full spread of like him looking at her and her looking at him, and hopefully from the expressions on their face you can also tell what they're thinking. And so there was a lot of cases with the illustrations like that where I just completely cut out a whole section of prose. It's like, I don't need this anymore.
Right.
Now I just have two pictures of people looking at each other, and you can tell what they're thinking.
That was actually one of the things I was wondering is, did they do an audiobook for this?
Yeah, and I don't listen to my audiobooks. Do you listen to your audiobooks?
I generally don't listen to audiobooks, period. Not because I don't like them, but because like I don't usually I can't write and listen to an audiobook at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, half the time I'm illustrating, so audiobooks are great for me, but I don't listen to my own because I just find that excruciating.
I would end myself.
Every time the reader, they all do a great job and a much better job than I could do, but they stressed the wrong syllable. And then I just have to like turn it off and pace around the house angrily for 10 minutes afterwards. So I do that to myself.
That's fair.
But what was the question? Sorry.
How they adapted that for the audiobook? Did they just skip over the picture entirely?
It's my understanding from talking to somebody who listened to it that they just kind of skip over the pictures entirely. Some of the pictures have words that run across them, and they read that part. But it does mean that something's missing. I mean, obviously something's missing, but there's even some places. It's a favorite place of mine that there's probably other examples too, but there's this one spot when Zelda has really kind of figured out, okay, this is a dream, and she's trying to think, how long have I been dreaming? How much of this is this town that I'm in right now? Is it like my actual hometown? Like, why can I not remember? And she's thinking about things about the town. The point is, he was new, and then he disappeared, and now she's asking questions. Because before yesterday, everyone was her regular neighbors, the butcher and baker and laundromat clown. There's a laundromat clown.
Boy, is there ever.
So she thinks, was that normal? Do laundromats have clowns? Some fast food restaurants have clowns as mascots, commercial spokes clowns. So whatever, the laundromat has one too. Maybe the customers think it's fun. A clown who's always there, who never speaks, watching you while you do your laundry, just watching and grinning like a broken window and pinching the cheeks of your children. That's the bottom of that page, and then the page turns to hopefully a reasonably chilling.
World's scariest clown.
The reason the page turns to this is because you're seeing what Zelda's thinking in that moment. And then the very next word is just, huh. And then she says, the clown is definitely just a dream thing, she thinks. It'll be gone when she's figured something out in the illustration that you don't get if you just read it, you know? The illustration is there to basically answer a question that was asked on the previous page. And there's more than one place like that, and that's what I try to do with these illustrations, more so than, you know, standard illustrations in a book that would just be like, here's a scene of the wizard's laboratory, here's what it looks like when they're sword fighting, and so forth. So I do feel like, you know, something is lost in the audiobook version, but I'll take whatever readers I can get. But
Yeah, but it's always interesting to think about, because I do really enjoy when books have really interesting and new or cool design elements. And the question is, you know, how does that get translated into audio? And audio does things that, you know, a physical book can't. Like I've seen some that, heard some that like have, you know, music or sound effects in the background.
or a full cast that
Right.
really can help personify the characters,
Right.
you know, even in ways that aren't on the page.
Right. So that is, you know, they've got their own strengths. It's just always interesting to see how they try to translate those between formats.
Yeah.
So there's a very complex relationship at the heart of this book. And can you talk about the challenges of writing this particular love story? And what do you want to convey to YA readers with this particular romance?
So Zelda and Langston are thrown together, you know, really thrown together after Zelda has kind of worked out that this is a dream, and she's trying to figure out what she's going to do about it. And then she really meets Langston finally face to face after having had that conversation with him in the bushes. And I think the challenge of this particular thing was, I think you twig pretty early on to the idea that it's probably either her dream or his. And so she's either literally his dream girl or he's literally her dream guy. And so it was, the real challenge was not just to have them kiss on page 30, you know?
Right.
And so a lot of the obstacles end up being just Zelda getting all up in her own head about this idea, like he's not even real. He's a figment of my imagination. And is that weird then? Is, you know, would being romantic with him be like me drawing a picture of a pretty boy and, you know, and kissing my own picture? You know, it's right. a strange idea to her. And she starts even wondering about, you know, the full personhood and agency of this other person. Like, if he is just a figment of my imagination, he's not even a real person. And then that means that he can't make his own choice about whether or not he loves me. And does that matter? This is just a dream, but it feels like it matters. And a lot of that kind of ties into a lot of thoughts I've had about my own teenage years, where I think I was so wrapped up in myself that I forgot to assign full personhood to the people around me, and just thought they were the sometimes useful backup characters and staff of my amazing narrative, because obviously I'm the main character. And so for me, like, getting older and maturing was a process of realizing that we're all the main character of a story. And so I tend to write about that a lot, mostly just because I really regret some of the, you know, what I thought was callousness and selfishness on my part when I was younger.
Thanks. Yeah, it is a tricky question, you know. I think you go from, you know, or being a teenager is going from being like needing to be cared for to you to assert your own ability to care for yourself. And that is a tricky place to navigate, of figuring out or balancing, you know, I need to be cared for versus I need to do this for myself.
Yeah, and also, what do I owe to everyone else?
Right.
And I think that's maybe that's the last step in the road of finally growing up, when you realize, oh, I'm actually supposed to be taking care of everybody else to some degree too. Like, we all owe each other something. And so, and in a weird way, I feel like there's almost a meta element to this book, and that one of the struggles for Zelda in this is that she comes to realize, when she figures out that it's a dream, that this cute, idyllic little town that she thinks she's grown up in, that the only thing she can remember where everyone loves her and knows her name, even if she doesn't know theirs, and they cheer her on and go, yay Zelda if she has exact change for the bus. She realizes, oh, this town sucks. Like, I deserve more than this. This was not a full existence. This was not something in which I got to be challenged, and I didn't get to be a real person because I wasn't surrounded by real people. And so the quest for her becomes like, I got to make sure that I am the dreamer and figure out what to do with it. I can't seem to wake myself up. So what do I do? Because this can't be all I got. This dream, like half existence in a paper town full of paper people, can't be the only thing that I got. And so I have to be the dreamer, and I have to be able to wake up. And so in that sense, she's really kind of like a character in a story, lamenting that she got a lousy, poorly written story to exist in, and hoping for more. So she kind of sets out on her own quest and starts writing her own story just to see if she can get something better out of me. So it was kind of in a way, sort of a conversation between she and me during the course of writing the story, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, actually,
this is something I've been figuring out over the last 5 days, the last 5 sleep-deprived days. So
very appropriate. Yeah.
Tell me if it doesn't make sense.
No. That actually segues really nicely into, I think, the final question before we go to audience questions, which is, so Langston and Zelda are each on their own journeys in this book, and what do you feel like sets their journeys apart, and what drew you to each of those particular individual journeys?
Langston has almost like an opposite kind of journey, in that he starts out the story being perfectly satisfied with the idea that he's a supporting character in Zelda's dream. I think a lot of times when I write characters, prominent characters, especially in longer form things, the characters either become the sort of person I wish I was, or the sort of person I'm afraid I actually am. And Zelda is more like the brave, motivated, facing the world squarely kind of person that I wish I were more like. And Langston is the person who's, he's going to be a great wife guy when he gets a little bit older, and I often feel like in my own life, like all the best things that have ever happened to me just happened because I was following my wife around. Otherwise, I'd probably just sit at home and read books. So, nothing against reading books, obviously, but
Please continue to do that.
Yeah, please. But so Langston's story is more about realizing, like, Zelda knows she deserves more. Langston has to be convinced over the course of the story that he deserves more, and that he should be the main character of his own story. And that, yes, everybody is the main character of their own story, but you do have to be the main character of your own as well. And so that's kind of the difference between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, that is 2:45 on the dot, so I think we've got time for some questions.
I love those questions. Thank you.
Yeah. I only made part of it.
Yes.
So I noticed you used the word page turn when you were talking about that picture, and I just thought, kind of uniquely positioned after all your work in picture books to be putting illustrations in a YA book, maybe?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept in novels to even be thinking about the page turn, because when you're writing a prose novel, you have no idea where the page breaks are going to happen. That's somebody else's problem. Where the chapter breaks are going to happen, you control that. Where the paragraph breaks are going to happen, you control that. But the pages, no. But in picture books, page turns are huge. Picture books, you might only have 32 or 40 or 48 pages, and you want to make those page turns count as much as possible. That every one of them should be some kind of a revelation if you're making a great picture book, or it could be like joke and punchline, or question and answer. But page turns are really big in that kind of format. And so I unfortunately wrote this YA novel where they ended up being a big deal in this too. And I say unfortunately because it was a huge pain in the neck. We had all these places where I was saying after they had sort of laid out the book, like, this is great, thank you. So here's the problem, like this illustration really has to fall after this line. And we didn't want the line to, a page just to randomly stop 1/3 of the way down and have an illustration. So it's like, what can we do now? I really want that paragraph to end, ideally at the end of one of the recto pages, and then turn the page and on the verso have this picture that answers the question that was asked by the previous page. And so that turned out to be pretty difficult, and I ended up rewriting a lot of
I wondered if you did.
I had to.
Yeah.
And we'd have all these sections that, I'd get back, we think you need to lose 7 lines between the beginning of chapter 35 and this picture in order to get it in the right place. So go. And so sometimes it turned out to be reasonably easy to find the places, but sometimes it was just, if I change this 5-letter word to a 3-letter word, then I think the line will break differently and the paragraph will be 1 line fewer, so that'll move everything up a little bit, and it was like that. And so, I try not to be too precious about my writing, of course I am, but I saw that you were actually following along during my reading, so you saw some places where I actually didn't even read certain lines, because I don't want to read that. Maybe I shouldn't have written it if I don't want to read it, or maybe I don't think I have the chops to perform it. I don't know. But there's, even now, after that long process, I'm still, as I'm reading the book out loud in public settings, finding places that like, oh, I didn't need to have that. So it wasn't impossible, but it was certainly a challenge I've never particularly faced before. And, based on the feedback I was getting, I don't think my publisher had ever had to deal with it either. So if anything, I probably convinced them never to do this kind of book ever again.
What else, my other question, would you do it again?
I would, yes,
Okay.
but if they would follow me into it.
Okay.
But what I want to do at some point is make a graphic novel. And I'm kind of surprised, being a writer and an illustrator who loves comics, why have I not really made comics before? I slipped, there's like 4 pages of comics in this book. There's my debut novel had probably like 10 pages of comics in it, but
I thought this was a graphic novel from your Facebook post, the illustrations.
yeah, I've been posting so many illustrations that I've tried not to mislead people, but yeah, maybe I should be even clearer about that.
No, it's fine.
But I love comics, and I'm afraid of doing them myself because it's so much work, and doing 200 or 300 pages of illustrations. I think such a thing would take me 4 years, probably. Will I be able to feed my family for 4 years on the advance I would get for a book like that? So
Yeah, you haven't done a graphic novel because you've chosen to love yourself.
yeah, but some people find like pared down ways of making the art simpler but still great, and so I gotta figure out my way of like simplifying but still making something I love. I always recommend Vera Grosgall in this moment. Her. She has this graphic novel called Be Prepared, and it is stylized and somewhat simplified, but it's just perfectly drawn.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at her and think, okay, that. Or like Sean Harris's work on the First Cat in Space Ate Pizza. Anybody familiar with The First Cat in Space Ate Pizza? It's a Matt Barnett book that Sean Harris illustrated, and all of his illustrations are also fairly simple, but just I look at them and think, yep, that looks exactly the way it's supposed to look.
Mm-hmm.
And not to name names, but I look at a lot of other graphic novels and think, oh, they just worked really fast. And that's not the thing I want somebody to think when they look at my work, is like he had to rush things along. He didn't take as long on this panel as he probably wanted to.
I love the way you did this stuff.
Thank you.
This sounds wonderful.
Yeah, but this was only like 75 pages of illustrations as opposed to 300, and for the most part, just one illustration on each page as opposed to like 5 different panel scenes, it could work out to being just literally thousands of individual images, and so I find that very daunting.
I did a preview comic of a scene in this, just as sort of like a fun promotional thing before the book came out, and something that was like maybe 1 page maximum, like just one scene, like 600 words, I think, even. It was 11 pages of comics, and it's just the conversion rate is rough, and it took me like a month to do it, and it was full color, so I was not kind to myself, but it took me a month to do 11 pages when it took me a couple hours to write 600 words. It's again the conversion rate.
Yeah, the conversion rate is supposed to be that the picture's worth 1,000 words, so maybe you actually
And yeah, okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Anybody wants to throw something out?
Anybody else?
Questions, comments, concerns?
I got one question.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Are you writing more picture books?
Yeah. Right now, I am working on sketching out a picture book that I wrote about a boy who befriends his own echo. And I am illustrating a picture book by another author. And I have like 2 more in the pipeline. One of them I wrote, and it's being illustrated by Audrey Helen Weber, and I have no idea when they're going to be done with it. Another one I'll write and illustrate, but I haven't even finalized the manuscript on that one. I think those are all the ones that I actually have under contract at this point. And stupidly, in 9 days, I have another book coming out.
Godspeed.
Yeah, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Like, I mean, obviously it's a nice problem to have that my people want to publish my books and that they're coming out, but you really don't want the 2 of your books to come out within the same 2-week period. At least the second one is not a YA novel. It's a young chapter book about a silly little wizard named Gumluck. You've seen that?
I have.
Right. So yeah, that'll be out on the 15th, the first of those. And so I'm also working on book number 3 of that series. And if people like them, I hope to just keep writing them until I die. But right now, I've only gotten somebody to agree to do the first 3.
Yeah, I had that an anthology that came out that I was the co-editor on about 2 weeks after my last book, which came so I had May 16th and then June 6th. It was not fun.
If you're at all like me, you don't really love going on social media and asking people to please buy your book in the first place, and knowing that at the moment I stop talking about this book, I'm going to have to say, "Hey, I got a new book coming out," and people are going to think they're hallucinating because didn't he just say that 2 weeks ago?
We had time.
But yeah, I'm not looking forward to that either. But at least it's something very different, and it's got a cute wizard and a little ghost named Butterscotch. He's the ghost of an ice cream scoop that fell off the cone and melted without being eaten.
Does he look like a bedsheet ghost or like an ice cream scoop? Or
He looks a little bit like he doesn't look like an ice cream scoop, but he looks a little bit kind of bloopy and melty.
Yeah.
I'll show him to you in a second, but
That was the image I was getting. Yeah. Okay.
did you have any more?
I was like,
I can keep going.
Did somebody just grab? Oh, somebody just grabbed Be Prepared and The First Cat in Space ate pizza and put them on this. And it's an incredible coincidence, but here are the 2 books I was just talking about.
Oh, hey.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Perfect.
Yeah, so here's Vera Grosgall's book, Be Prepared.
Oh.
It is,
Oh yeah. No, I see what you mean. Just perfect. Yeah.
it's definitely, cartooning,
It reminds me of Jen Wong.
Yeah, actually,
Really effective.
just like she's another person that she can do something that looks simple, but every line is exquisitely perfect. And
Some of the kind of simple words like this took 20 years to be able to do.
then, she only did 2 color as well, which I don't think I would do because I know that's my son's least favorite thing about this book. He likes this book, but he likes, Raina Telgemeier books better because those are in 4 color. And where I look at this and thought, ooh, 2 color, that's so sophisticated.
Right.
Oh, olive. Now black and olive, like that does not appeal, I don't think, to the target audience. Whereas this probably does. A full color book of weird baby pirates and princesses and robots, and this is a very different kind of style, but I look at this style and think that looks exactly the way it's supposed to look. And so that's all I want when people look at my work. My work does not have to be photorealistic or super detailed, but I just want it to look intentional.